I led the way back along the trail we had come, my flashlight in hand, but off. It was easier to navigate the trail by the feel of the ground under my feet. The trail was packed and smooth, mostly. When I veered off of the trail, the ground became mushy and the old leaves kicked up over my feet. It was December, cold and raw, silent. We'd had a snow a few weeks back, but it was mostly gone now. And I knew that if I could see anything at all, I could see my frozen breath in front of my eyes. But I could not see a thing. My father walked behind me a couple of paces. I could hear his feet as they touched the ground. We were about halfway back to the intersecting trail that climbed straight up the hill, back to the parking lot and to our warm car and our eventual pizza dinner. We had walked in the dark many, many times before, and this was a particularly favorite place. We had visited this reservoir in all seasons. We knew the lake when it was frozen and overflowing and low. We had scrambled over the rocky, dry stream bed that ran out of the lake in the summer. We had slipped off of those same rocks when the water rushed around them in spring. Earlier today, we had picked our way carefully through the patches of ice, careful. We headed back to the car after crossing the stream and spending a few minutes contemplating the lake from that far side. The sun had begun to go down as we crossed back over the stream earlier, and now it had been down for quite some time. When walking in the dark, you must slow down and feel your way along the path, using your feet to guide the way, trusting that you will find the trail. We kept our flashlights close, but many years before, I had discovered that the dim circle of light became a hindrance. Yes, it's true, I could see the ground in front of me, but the trail and the forest looked exactly the same in the circle, in the light. When my sight took over in the light, my feet could no longer feel the trail. I could no longer find my way. I became lost in the dark. And so we walked in the dark. When we arrived at the intersecting trail, I bared left, intending to follow the trail uphill. I wanted that pizza. What 10-year-old wouldn't? But my father asked me to hold on a second. He had a different plan. Because we could not be sure that we had found the intersecting trail, we would continue walking along with the lake on our right through the woods. Eventually, according to the map, we would run into a stream that fed the lake. Once we hit the stream, we would turn left and follow it to the road. Then we would walk back to our car on the road. So we continued with the lake on our right, an unknown stream up ahead, and my hopes for pizza, those would wait in the dark. We are in the dark time, the time to slow down, to go slowly, to pay attention, the time to turn inward, to reflect, to wait. For those of the Christian tradition, this is a very special time. It is the time to prepare for Mary's baby, who will be born in a couple of weeks. I imagine Mary, a young woman, pregnant, about to give birth, any day now, really. She and her fiancé have left their home to travel across the desert. They and all the others living under Roman rule have been ordered to return to natal villages to be counted for the census. What an awful journey that must have been. At least, I imagine it was awful. I've never been pregnant, but those of you who have, maybe you can remember what it was like 3 weeks before your baby came. What would have it been like to travel by donkey across the desert in those last couple of weeks? It seems like a horrible experience to me. These last few weeks, up to the arrival of the new baby, is a quiet time of slow, last-minute preparations. The spare room has already been cleaned out and created for the new baby. The walls have been painted, the crib has been set up, and now we wait. We wait with expectation, anticipation, excitement, maybe a little apprehension too, for the new baby. We know that everything will be different when this new one arrives. This story of waiting for the return of the Son is a very old story. There are versions of this story all across the Northern Hemisphere. It is the story of waiting in anticipation for the returning sunlight. For this is the time just before the earth tilts back towards the sun. Our daylight hours are few, the nighttime is long, the shadows stretch far across the yard. Before the sun has barely risen, it seems to be setting. These last few weeks before the solstice are important because it is the time in the cycle when we might begin to doubt that the sun will ever come back. Today, we know that the earth is simply or amazingly tilting on its axis, but for our very, very ancient ancestors, it was not so. It was a scary time, a time of uncertainty. Our ancestors did not know if the sun would return. They feared they would be plunged into the darkness forever. We evolved out of those ancient ancestors, and our amygdalae, our lizard brains, are still wired to respond to these long nights of waiting with twinges of fear. Many of us have been trained since childhood to be afraid of the dark. Our parents called to us, "Come inside now, it's getting dark." We associate darkness with that which is scary or negative. Darkness is associated with evil, sin, night, nightmares, ghosts, bats, owls, criminals, danger, doubt, depression, loss, and fear. This fear of the dark and associating dark with negative implies things about dark-skinned people that are not true, and we are stuck with this for now. The Western culture of which we are a part has taught us to project everything that we do not like, do not know about, and fear into the darkness. We have been taught that if we just put everything we want no part of into a closet, shut the door, and lock the door, we will be safe and unafraid. This is a lie, because that closet is inside of each of us. It is not over there, it is not in that other country, it is not across the border, it is not in that neighborhood. That place we tried to shove all that dark into is inside of us. And until we accept this, open the door and enter into the darkness, we will always be controlled by our fear. Entering into the darkness is frightening because we want no part of what is in there. And we know that that is in there because we put it in there. Everything we know nothing about, everything we hate, everything we fear is right there, waiting in the dark. And we think it is waiting to hurt us and devour us and get us, like the monster in the closet of our childhoods. But the monster is not afraid of us. It is a part of us. And we need that time of darkness, that place of darkness. We need that stillness and reflection that the darkness offers in balance with the energy that light offers. We cannot survive without both. In the book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, Barbara Brown Taylor tells the story of a teacher who brought her class out to a cave to experience caving. The entrance to the cave was a small opening at the bottom of a large hole. The teacher, the guides, and the students climbed down into the hole on the ladder. The entranceway was quite small. In order to get in there, you had to lay down on your belly, put your arms in front of your head, and scooch yourself into the hole for the first few yards. The first guide went in, followed by the students, and then the teacher. She scooched herself into the hole and was fine as the light changed to twilight. But then, when the cave became utterly and completely dark, she suddenly was hit smack in the face by the truck that had killed her brother in a car crash a few months before. She backed right out of that cave, leapt past the second guide, and up the ladder and out of the hole, not once stopping to consider what she was doing. We do not know what we will encounter when we enter the dark. We only know that we will encounter. We do not know what shape our fears will take, but we can be certain that they take shape. We do not know what shape those things we want no part of will take, but we can be certain that we will run into them. That teacher that I mentioned a few minutes ago, she went on to become an expert caver. A few years back, I signed up for a 9-day silent retreat. We would spend each day in meditation, 45-minute sitting meditations interspersed with 30-minute walking meditations, eating meditations, tea drinking meditations, and cleaning meditations, all in silence, all without looking at the other people at the retreat. I had only ever meditated for a couple of minutes in church on Sunday morning. Though this was not a spiritual practice of entering into the dark, it was similar in that I ran up against those things I'd rather not have to deal with, those parts of myself I haven't fully integrated and kind of wish were not inside of me. We were given the instructions to name each thought as it entered into our awareness. I named them thinking, rehearsing, remembering, scolding, judging, and whoa, chill out, whoa, refocus. It turned out that when I sit in silence, I do a lot of thinking, but I also spend a lot of time being annoyed with noises that distract me. I was annoyed at my fellow meditators for coming in late to the meditation, annoyed that they scraped the chairs across the floor, annoyed that they scuffled around. As the days went on, I began to understand that my feelings of annoyance had little to do with my fellow meditators and everything to do with me and what is in my heart. I am hard on myself. I judge my shortcomings up against perfection. And there on the Zafu pillow, I was both judging my own inability to sit still and using my annoyance as a distraction. My frustration prevented me from entering the deep quiet of my inner sanctuary and sitting in the darkness. The more I thought about the annoying noises, the more I told myself to refocus on the quiet. That back and forth kept me near the surface, and I was unable to get deeper into the silence and into the darkness. As the hours wore on, I began to wonder why I was holding myself out of deep meditation. Was I afraid to enter into that inner sanctuary? What would I find when I entered into the darkness? On day 4, I finally thought to myself, really, who gives a hoot that there are noises in the room? Honestly, who cares? And with that release, I was able to descend down into the meditation from time to time in the following days. What release do you need in order to give yourself permission to enter down into the darkness that resides within? Are you afraid to discover what you might encounter? What monsters will you need to befriend? My hope for you, all of you, is that someday, maybe in the next couple of weeks during this dark time, that each of you will spend some time in the darkness, if you have not already. The meditation behind me, behind this wall, is nearly light-proof. It scares me to just think about sitting in there with the light off. It might be a manageable place to start. Do not be afraid to enlist the help of others in this journey into the darkness. Perhaps a friend will sit with you, or maybe your cat will sit on your lap, or your dog will keep an eye on you. It is possible that you may need to hire a therapist to help you through some of those depths. You might discover that you might need the help of an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or other medications, because sometimes in the dark we can discover that the chemicals in our brains are out of balance. And often in those situations we need to rebalance those chemicals before we can enter into a spiritual darkness. Hope bubbles in the depths of spiritual darkness. But if the chemicals in our brains are out of whack, it can be much more difficult to find it. With a warm blanket spread across your lap, may you enter into the darkness and wait. Move very slowly, step by step. It is the only way through. Hold each other's hands as you move through the darkness, praying that the sun will return, and knowing deep inside that the sun will return, and with it something new. We wait, pregnant with the new, trusting that what will come will help us to find a new way, giving us hope when hope is hard to find. May it be so.